So, Identity by Milan Kundera, or Kundera, I believe. I think I've heard it different ways. It's my first Kundera novel. I have heard of, and I have it in my list to read. Um, the Unbearable Lightness of Being is probably his most famous work, and it was adapted into a pretty well known movie, I think, with Daniel Day Lewis, I believe. But yeah, so Milan Kundera was recently he actually passed away, same year as Cormac McCarthy, so he lived quite a long life, I think into his 90s, so good for him. But yeah, he was born in, Poland, no wait, no, Czechoslovakia, I want to say Czech Republic, and he fled the Czech Republic because of how, something to do with the Soviet regime at the time, I believe in the 60s or 70s, um, and then he fled to France. So he basically this novel here is written in French, I believe. So there's a lot of different French names and kind of settings, and so it follows a couple. I don't know if they're married, but it's between Chantal, a woman who is about maybe reaching about middle age. It's kind of left to interpretation. And her lover is Jean-Marc, and she is sitting on the uh, Normandy, the coast of Normandy. So yeah, it's a very kind of northern France. It's a very a slightly little bit chilly kind of area from what my experience um, than the kind of more tropical, almost kind of area down near the south, near Basque country and all that. But yeah, so she's waiting for her lover, Jean Marc, and she's kind of just ruminating there, and she's basically looks at she's walking down the beach, and then she looks at a total stranger, and then she confuses him for Jean Marc, and then she's kind of upset because she also ends up having a bit of a sexually charged dream, uh, because of the way that one of the men looked at her in the restaurant that she was waiting, and so this kind of brings up kind of awkwardness because right off the theme is identity, right? So it's like she's very looking for the way men look at her is a very big part of this novel. Like, is a big part of why she's kind of upset, or that she thinks that she's upset, is the fact that men don't turn to look at her, at least in the same way that they did when she was younger. And so there's also this show that she's watching that she tries to catch on the television. It's more of a kind of passive entertainment, I think, but I think it's called Lost to Sight, and it's basically kind of like one of those crime. I don't know if it's a syndicate type of television show that might have been. This was released in 1998, by the way, so this is like quite a little bit, and you get kind of. I did hear some terms that were kind of more modern, especially probably concerning like other stuff. But he's, considering that Kundera lived a long life, he probably saw a lot and saw kind of a good amount of time before technology kind of was the status quo of television. Everybody having a television set was probably, I'm assuming, it was pretty common. I think around this time. But yeah, she's watching this Lost to Sight show that talks about those who have gone missing mysteriously and then never showed up again. And then the narrator, which is kind of a passive third-person voice that seems to have an intimate look into all the major characters throughout the novel, starts talking about something I found really uh, interesting, was the fact that they're talking about looking for a lost person, and like the amount of time and resources people, and they all of a sudden care about somebody who's kind of otherwise not really seen, not really, you know, identified, and they, like that kind of theme is kind of present there as well. So you see the subtext, I think, rising underneath the surface, and it's like basically that so many people spend so many time and resources tracking down people, and like it made me think, because I think I thought about this before, not to say that I'm special, but it's just like this idea of like, once you go missing, people are like way on your tail and like get every last iota of everything you've done, you know? And it's really not until, like, then for the rest of your life, it's, like, really hard, depending on, like, just to get people to kind of, like, look at you or to, like, have a conversation with you in other capacities. So yeah, this is a very human sense of kind of, like, of hypocrisy, I guess, or double standards that we feel for these missing people. So yeah, Chantel has this dream and it upsets her, and then she actually suffered a, I don't know if it's not a miscarriage, but a death of a child. So this is a recurring theme as well, that she's trying to rebuild, kind of rekindle something that she left with that child, and she's very upset by that. So there are different things throughout the novel where she might be upset by different things, but it might actually end up being kind of these deeper kind of hidden truths. And then, so when so she tells this to Jean-Marc, that she has this dream, and then asks her why she's kind of irritated, and she says that men don't turn to look at me anymore. And it's kind of this very definitive moment in the book, because I think it's this idea that it's not even that men want her necessarily. It's not even that. It's more so just the fact of, like, not being looked at, being prized, because she had this kind of mystique about her before. Like, she was able to turn heads in cafes and street corners, and she was able to just kind of, even, not particularly done up or not dolled up, she would be able to be, people would just be constantly, like, turning their heads to marvel at her. So it's kind of like, there's a bit of a sense of alienation from her and Jean-Marc in this sense, because there's also these faces that she puts on too. This is identity, this theme again, lots of different things, philosophy of identity in this, psychology as well. The fact that she also confesses to Jean-Marc that she goes to work, and then she has a different face for each person, for each kind of social sphere that she engages in, which I actually kind of relate to. I think probably a good amount of people, especially in the modern world. You have this professional face that she puts on for her colleagues at work, and then she has, like, more of a loving, kind of face that she puts on towards her friends and close people, and then a very special kind of maybe vulnerable face that she puts on for Jean-Marc. And yeah, there's also at this point, there's on Jean-Marc's side of the thing, there's a old kind of thing going on with a feud that he had with his friend, named, only referred to as F, I think. And he is kind of maybe purposefully left in the dark, in that sense that he's only referred to as an initial, kind of in a Kafkaesque way, where I think it's supposed to show kind of his, like, the way he takes it so seriously. And it does give a good amount of indications as to why he is like, not friends with this person, because of some sense of semblance or of betrayal, I think, that fractured and a rift in their friendship, and they haven't seen each other for years. And then he kind of is thinking about, ruminating about how that happened, and then we get kind of a deep dive into his mind about that, and he's thinking about how they used to work together too, and they were, like, in at some type of board meeting, I think, and that Jean-Marc was looking to his friend F, and was, like, saying, like, you agree with me, right? And then, or he was waiting for him to, like, it was some kind of transformative deal at the point that it's kind of left up in the air, I believe, but he's, like, looking to him for confirmation, and he, like, just completely stays silent and, like, doesn't listen to him the rest of the meeting, and then is just kind of sullen and silent and not giving him any of the validation that he felt he deserved as a friend. So that kind of went down the drain. And yeah, and then there's a point, because all these different kind of things are melding together, kind of dovetailing in one another in an interesting way. There is added to sort of the mystery of the stranger that she sees, that Chantal also receives a bunch of letters from a man that says that she's very beautiful, and she's very, in more poetic terms, obviously, in a very thoughtful kind of engaging way is like, like, but it's also like upsets her because she's like prizes her privacy obviously, doesn't want people to kind of like, be prying into that intimate part of her life, but she's like felt that she's been seen, again, that idea of the motif of, identity and seeing that this person knows her, particularly, and she's like she's both weirdly flattered and also kind of like a little bit like freaked out about it, because she's like, part of her like likes the fact that people are looking, that this guy is looking at her, and marvels at her and thinks highly, and then another part is just kind of like repelled, like she's like stressed out that maybe this guy's looking into her life a little bit too, like way too, more than just like an obliquely little say, I saw you in the park, but more in like a literally like into like her, bedroom windows at night, and that's getting creepy. So she's starts to hide the letters in her underwear drawer, and then there's like a couple there's more and more kind of fear going on about their identity, and then at some point Chantal's relatives come over, and then she's very like upset that they're kind of going around and like toying around in her drawers. That's right, exactly where the letters were, and she's like gets very defensive about it, and she's like, you can't just go into other people's houses and and just willy-nilly fly through the place and jump up and down, and it's with her younger, I think she has a niece, I think, or a nephew that I think is like running around, but she's like, so it's kind of understandable that she wouldn't like really understand those boundaries, but like, but her sister should have very well understood Chantal's, I think, kind of grief, and it's just a lot of, she's a bit older than Jean-Marc, so she's got a little bit of years ahead of her, and there's a bit more of a anxiety about this kind of stuff of aging and stuff, whereas Jean-Marc is like more he's more broken up about like the friendships, like the fact of that he felt like he's been kind of sold down the river, and in just for kind of a corporate kind of ruse, and he takes that very seriously, and yeah, they're both kind of not at the best point in their life, but yeah, toward the end it's actually, but this idea of like the simulacrum too, like the simulacrum is basically a little, I think, I don't know if it's French or if it comes from the Latin simile, like a simile, like verisimilitude has a similar type of thing, so similitude, simulacrum, simulacre, I think is plural. So Jean Baudelaire, I believe, post-structuralist, I think, more deconstructionalist, I think, took this more in, he, in the simulacra and simulacrum, I think, in that he, talked about this more in depth about how we see things that are like versions of truth, or small like simulacrums of truth, and that becomes a reality. Like in the way that media twists image, I think there was a very good, it's very fascinating lecture by, I think it was, I can't remember his name. It was he was a Southern professor, like a Southern, like, he was like a Texan professor, not Richard Rorty, but I don't remember his name, Dunn or something. I can't remember, but it was he talked about like the idea that Ronald Reagan, for example, the way that people kind of the way he said every single word off a teleprompter perfectly, was hyper real, and then also the way that like this Iran and Contra affair, I think, like the way he handled that, or the way that there's moments that we applaud like foreign affairs done by the United States, if we are the United States, only because of that, because it's our nomadic land, that we kind of appraise these things as great, and the way we value things is very partial, obviously, and I'm guilty of that as well. But the way we won that fight, we won that war on terror, like this is this and that, or weapons of mass destruction was all a part of a kind of big way of just kind of twisting the narrative into saying that, like, oh, we went in there and we, like, it was good versus evil, like the way we have to kind of turn it into this kind of black and white binary thing. So that's kind of what simulacrum means. So but this is more on a small scale, let's say, because it's the way Chantal feels that the letters have actually made her more open to dressing in a certain way to attract people, and then John Mark becomes jealous, and then that jealousy kind of fuels like a little bit of more of a thing, and more of a passion between them, because they've been a little bit kind of not as close as they once were, through the familiarity of marriage life. And but yeah, we all have these different kind of ranges, the way we use ourselves and the way we present ourselves to others, and I thought that was very interesting. But at the end, it's revealed that Jean-Marc, after getting it looked at by a graphologist, that the letter was actually written by him. So it was just in a, kind of a different manner to kind of like obfuscate the author. So, but yeah, yeah, it's kind of the back and forth I really loved, and that's how it ends, with the novel ending on that note of Chantal and Jean-Marc talking about each of their kind of the confusion about one another's identity, and how they kind of square that off, and how they kind of it's a almost like a Hegelian subject object kind of thing, with the subject always going to be perceived by the object, and there's never going to be a actual realization or actualized kind of consensus and closure, unless it's always fighting back and forth. So like what has to happen is, like, I think there has to be a healthy dialectic of each party. I think this is like easier said than done, but each party recognizing one another truthfully and with compassion, and I hope that's kind of what happens near the end. But it's kind of left up to the interpretation. But anyway, so that is Milan Kundera's Identity. Thanks for watching.